It's also weird how these poems are working logically or not, you know.
Well, I would say, yeah, they're not working logically. Like, there's no
But you
logic.
sort of have to do some, acrobatics to make it happen.
Yeah, well, and this coincides with the internet. Social media are serving poetry, right? Logical leaps. We want to talk about that. I mean, I don't know. I have
Well,
a
I mean,
huge
I think
issue
there's
with it.
something to be said with, moving by association
Sure.
as opposed to logic, and I think that can work
Yeah,
and
it
can work
can.
well.
But I just mean it's become like the only thing that matters. So a bunch of random thoughts scattered together on a page, and then people, hundred
I
thousand
don't even think
likes.
it's that. I think if it's like if it sounds kind of like a poem, people will, I mean, not everybody, but a lot of people would just accept it, right? Especially in the social media world, when you get
Well,
into like Instagram
that's
poetry,
that's
like you
my
can sort
point.
of just
Yeah.
write a sentence, and you can argue, poems in the purest way are like composed of sentences. So yeah, you could say that, well, you could just break up the sentence on the page and pay some attention to how it works with sound, and there it is. But people will just sort of shit out something that's really kind of been said 800 times by any emo teen who like bought a typewriter
Well, not even that it's said. I just mean like
and
the.
slap their name on it and say this is a poem, and people will go, yes, yes it is.
I just mean in terms of the logical leaps. Like in terms of talking about one thing and then leaping to something that like has so little connection. Like we call that craft right now, but like I would argue it's not. And they'll be like, oh, well, they can put these two things together. I was like, yeah, but like, what about when it sucks? Like when it doesn't work
Yeah,
successfully,
well,
which
it's
is like
like
what
what
most
you're
poetry is
talking
now.
about, like a bad metaphor. Like,
Not even a bad metaphor because there is no metaphor. I don't even think that, like, would you say there's a lot of
so,
metaphor in this? Or,
no, but I
yeah,
mean, I think it's
that's what I mean.
similar.
Well, that's what I mean. Like, even in this book, that there's not a lot of metaphor. Well, big characteristic in terms of social media that is what we call poetry now, which is just social media posts. So, yeah, I mean, it's just more of that. I know this is just the beginning stages of it. She went to UMass Amherst, so she had a little bit more of that kind of, what we would just say, what would we call it, the kind of academic training to it. So it's not quite as bad as like a Instagram only poet, but it's there. It was all there. This is when it all started, dude. Like this is when it all started to just any mediocre sentence could be considered a poetry if we just said it enough. Any mediocre association, any completely illogical leap to another subject mid poem, like we talked about that very first poem in this book. In the middle part, there's like this really weird leap of logic to things that we just can't quite follow. And it's like, yeah, you know why you can't follow it? Because it's so fucking random. It's like meaningless. You know what I mean? Like it
Uh,
isn't some fucking mystery that be unlocked with like constant like shit. It's just bad. Like that's my biggest qualm with all this shit. Like, oh well, if I read it enough, and if I really been was as generous as possible, and I'm just Well, when can we start saying things are bad? Like when can we start saying that actually this is a bad book of poems? I don't know. It doesn't appear anytime soon.
oh,
But
definitely not now.
yeah,